introduce our moderator, Bill Briggs, and we'll welcome all the candidates.
Hold the applause. Thank you, Peter. Well, and thank you for saving me 10 minutes of rules that I was planning to make. You did a much better job. So, my name is Bill Briggs. I want to make it clear that I'm not associated with Plan Boulder. I'm not associated with any political organization, any campaign group. I've not endorsed a candidate and contributed to a candidate. So I am as neutral as possible. I got no dog in this game. So with that, let's get started.
2-minute opening statement.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a three-ring circus here, but I think I got the rules. So let's, Taishya, are you settled, or should we let's let, okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure. That's fine. So let's start at Paul, let's start at this end, and 2-minute opening statement, anything you'd like to say.
So introducing myself?
Yeah.
Please introduce
You can
yourself.
stand up and take the microphone.
There's one other logistical thing. We've got the microphone. I don't know if some of you want to use it or whether you want to pass
Can
it.
everybody hear me?
Use the microphone. Use the microphone.
Yes.
I actually would like to ask everybody to use the microphone. I actually have hearing issues.
Okay.
Fine, let's go with that. Just pass the mic.
1, 2, 3, test. Is that working?
Hold it close.
Alright, my name is Tweedlie. Hello, 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
My name is Tweedlie, and I've lived in Boulder. I've got my little bio here, so that I don't make a mistake. I've lived in Boulder on 4th Street for 20 years. First of all, I'd like to thank Bill and Plan Boulder for putting this event together. I'm a software engineer and have 35 years of experience developing 3D design, simulation and manufacturing systems for the aerospace industry. I attend the Sacred Heart of Jesus Church in Mapleton. I grew up in Scotland. You may wonder about my accent. I moved to Rhode Island in '93. I got married to Laurie, who was studying at Brown University. We had a son together in Utah, and we moved the family to Boulder in 2000. When Laurie was offered a job at CU, I'm still a CU fan. In Boulder, I work for a local software company, Anarch. A really great team, and I believe they're hiring. I retired 5 years ago, and now I'm working on my garden. Mostly growing vegetables, some flowers out front, just to make it presentable, in case my mother comes to visit. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. My name is Aaron Brockett. I am a current member of the Boulder City Council. I've been on that body for 8 years, and I have been the mayor of Boulder for the last 2 years. It has been the great honor of my life to serve in these roles. And I want to thank Plan Boulder for putting on this forum. It's always one of the highlights of the campaign season. And I wanted to call out a couple of my colleagues, Jeannie Joseph and Matt Benjamin, who are here with us from the City Council as well. So I live in North Boulder with my wife and my 2 kids. We've raised our children here over the last 20 years. We're so fortunate to live in such a wonderful town. I want to call out a handful of accomplishments that I'm proud of from my time on Boulder City Council, including passing a suite of sanctuary city ordinances after Trump was elected to protect our immigrant and undocumented communities. Also passing, an assault weapons ban in 2018, and then after that was overturned, and after the terrible tragedy of Queen Supers, joined with my colleagues to vote in a comprehensive set of gun violence prevention legislation after that event, as well as being part of the creation of hundreds of units of affordable housing, over 100 units of permanent supportive housing, and many other facilities for our people in need here in our communities, adding rental assistance, adding eviction protection assistance, and many other things. And one thing I'll call out that I'm also very proud of having been involved in is championing the CARE program. This is coming online shortly. This is a non-police-based emergency response program modeled after the STAR program in Denver. This is coming online in a couple of months. I appreciate my colleagues for supporting that program as well. It's something that I've worked on for a couple of years. I know we're going to get into the details of policy here in a little bit, so I won't get into policy details in my introductory statement. I also want to be very careful to end ahead of time Because I've cut enough people off at the 2-minute mark. I don't want it to have it come back to me. So wonderful to be here with you today and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Forgive me for sitting down, but this is the first campaign deal of the season. I haven't quite memorized much text, so I'm going to hear from the computer. I'll stand up for the vote. Leadership matters. Our town is at a crossroads. This fall, we will decide whether you want a community that is safe and clean, whether we will embrace housing that is truly affordable for people who work here, whether we protect our local environment and do our part to combat climate change. These will be your choices. You deserve a leader who will listen to you, who will be effective in putting your decisions to work. I've had the great fortune to serve in leadership positions for 4 decades. I spent a quarter of a century in a variety of leadership positions in the business world. After I retired from paid work in 2011, I led a number of Boulder community organizations, including Dairy Arts Center, Chautauqua, Downtown Boulder, the Conference on World Affairs, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. My proudest accomplishment in this area was serving for 4 years as president of the Boulder History Museum, as we converted it to the beautiful Museum of Boulder. For the last 8 years, I've served as a member of the Boulder City Council. On council, I've championed public safety, affordable housing, climate action, effective transportation systems, and economic vitality. But my last 2 years on council have been less enjoyable than my first 6. Over the last 2 years, the majority on council has made decisions that I believe are wrong. Over the last 2 years, that council majority voted to give away the beautiful library that we sit in today. That council majority voted to yield the city's local land use authority to the state. That council majority decided to appoint someone to our police oversight panel who was not qualified for the job and who had to be removed 2 months later. And just last week, that council majority voted to increase the occupancy limit of Boulder's rental properties without ensuring that rent would be affordable for those tenants. I voted against each of those poorly considered choices, but each time I was in the minority. So you can see why the last few years haven't been much fun for me. But you can change that. This fall, you will have the right and the opportunity to select Boulder's first directly elected mayor.
Time's up.
I'll say the rest of it later.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you to all the organizers at Boulder County for having us today, and thank you all so much for taking time out of your days to be here. I'm Dr. Nicole Speer. I'm a mom to 2 sassy high school students. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist, and I lead a diverse team of technologists, data scientists, and students in the Institute of Cognitive Science at CU Boulder. I'm also a current city councilwoman, and I'm running to be the first elected mayor of Boulder. I don't anticipate that I'll get plans endorsement this year, but I'm really looking forward to talking with you this afternoon about the places where we can work together, because we do share some important beliefs. That environmental protections and quality of life should trump corporate profits. That we should have open and honest conversations about critical issues in our local government. And that the future of our open space will be determined by our stewardship of lands and ecosystems. I hope that over the past 2 years, you've seen that I don't subscribe to any one political ideology, and that I'm committed to working together on our shared goals. Recently, as our guest opinion on the Daily Camera noted, Mark Wallach and I collaborated to advocate for good governance and fiscal responsibility. I also share an interest with many of you in transitioning the airport into a vibrant, compact, self-contained community that restores our connection to the land and to each other. I know we won't have this type of community overnight, but many of you from Plan have shown me how far we can go with a clear vision, strong leadership, and a lot of persistence. Lisa Morzell put a line in our comprehensive plan almost 10 years ago that's gonna allow us to have that airport conversation tomorrow night. Leslie Glestrom's 2 decades of advocacy got Excel to close their coal-fired power plant 40 years before they were intending to. And Ruth Wright's conference on Greenbelts half a century ago led to 45,000 acres of open space today. We don't always agree, but we can do a lot when we work together on our shared goals. So whether I'm a candidate for mayor or not, let's dream big about Boulder's future. Thank you.
Howdy, I'm Jacques Decalo. I'm Boulder born and raised. I was born at North Boulder Community Hospital that no longer exists, but is going to be hopefully a future sustainable development. My platform is a sustainable platform to ensure that Boulder can be the most sustainable city possible. I'm a lifelong environmentalist. I learned conservation through Boulder's early initiatives to protect our environment and ensure that we are an integrated city with nature accessible for all. I have seen Boulder change from when I was a kid, where it was a very family-oriented city, to where it is now, where it's become a booming tech hub, where multiple tech companies want to come in and bring jobs and boost our economy, which is great, but I think it's important that we have sensible dialogue when doing this and look at the job balance and the housing balance and affordable housing and making sure this is all done in a sustainable way. There's been groundwork laid through the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan that allows us to pursue this, but I think we've been lacking a little bit in the true values that make Boulder a green hub. If elected to City Council, I'll ensure that every policy decision I have is leading towards sustainability and reducing our greenhouse gases while ensuring that Boulder is inclusive for all. I believe that everything that Boulder stands for is something that I stand for, and I think that it's important to have community dialogue between all community members of Boulder.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Taishya Adams. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been living in the city of Boulder for 11 years. I'm an educator, an environmentalist, and a social justice advocate who's dedicated their lives to that intersection. I'm excited about the opportunities that we are facing through our poly crisis. The poly crisis of climate, of affordability, not just housing, food. I've talked to our members in our community who are struggling with food insecurity, transportation, childcare, right? And so wages is obviously another critical component of the work. And so the other piece, though, is cultural. Our community is in a cultural fight. Right? Who do we want to be? What do we want our students and families to know about our history, about our present, to inform our future? I have spent my life at this intersection, and I bring to this race and to our dais expertise in climate resilience. I came off the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, where I was appointed by Governor Polis as the first African-American woman to serve in its 122 years at the time. I am used to the rig and roll. I am used to being somewhere I was never supposed to be. And I do it with grace and compassion. And compassion is the next thing I bring to this table. Cultural competence and a compassion and an understanding of diversity in all of the ways. I grew up in Northern Virginia, middle school Los Angeles, high school New York City. But in Northern Virginia at the time, it was beautiful grass, trees, and all these wonderful things. So I keep my place and my roots building in Boulder because I want to contribute to my ancestors whose labor helped to buy this land in the Louisiana Purchase. I have responsibilities and obligation that their investment is one that they can be proud of. Thank you.
Just for those who came in late, let me be clear what's going on here. We have 4 mayoral candidates on your right, and Jacques and Taishya are city council candidates. So we're going to split up the program a little bit at this point and have 2 rounds of questions just for the mayoral candidates. Then we'll go to questions for everybody. Hope that's good. Mark, do you have a question?
They're trying to find seats. And so there's 90 seconds for this one.
Yeah.
Peter, would you consider sitting over here? Because we're looking this way, it's hard to see the time.
Well, we need 2 of us. I'll just gesticulate wildly. Yeah, I can move. You want to move over there? We can move. We're flexible.
Sorry to be trouble.
No, you know. Getting used to it.
Okay, so for the next few minutes, Jacques and Taishya can just relax or sweat or whatever you like over there. And here's the first question for the mayoral candidates. And let's go ahead and start with Paul.
You gotta ask the question first.
This is why I don't understand why they ask me back every year. Okay, mayoral candidates, describe your view of the elected mayor position. What responsibilities are the same and which differ from the role of elected city council members? And I would just add one slight addendum to that. how do you see the role of the mayor now as an elected position compared to the mayor previously? Okay, now, Paul, it's your turn.
All right, as I understand it, the mayor's got no more responsibilities or power than any of the other 8 members of city council. So his role is kind of, what would you say, more of a figurehead for the town, I guess, for people to rally behind. So I'm not on city council, so I can't give you a certain detail. I can tell you why I'm running for city council. Why would anyone in their right mind want to run for city council? I think that's a big question. I mean, it's like, it's long hours, you've got to work with annoying, difficult people, and I hear the money's not very good. And the reason I want to run is because I love Boulder, I love this quirky town. You know, they say, you've heard that saying, people are weird. I think it's hard to find anyone that's normal. Anyway, I love this historic town, I love its historic character, and I want to preserve it. And that's why I'm running for mayor of Boulder.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, so I don't think it's changing really. So with you're 1 member of 9 on city council, you have the same vote, and the poll's not changing. So I'll tell you what, if I am elected, if you do me the honor of electing me to this position, I will keep doing what I've been doing so hard for the last 2 years, which is getting out into the community on a daily basis, going to all of the community events, representing the city, supporting our nonprofits at every turn, keeping a sharp eye on the council agenda, making sure that everything is on the right track. We're getting all kinds of stuff done this fall, y'all. It's gonna be an exciting time, but it requires a careful eye on that agenda. And going out and representing the city in all of our regional and national and state bodies. So I have deep ties with the communities in Boulder County, with the mayors, the councils, the mayor of Denver, and with the state bodies, state legislature. So this is something I worked very hard on, is to represent the city as best as I possibly can to make sure that Boulder's unique voice is present at all of the tables, whether that's in town or out of town when necessary. So I've worked extremely hard. I've dedicated all of my time for the last 2 years to doing that. If you elect me, I'll continue serving in that role and doing it every day. Thank you so much.
Aaron's right, legally, it doesn't change. The fact that you pick the mayor as opposed to 5 or 6 people on city council doesn't change. The mayor is still one of 9 council members with exactly 9 votes. However, I think there are some improvements, and this is true whether the people directly elect the mayor or whether the mayor is selected. Those of you who have served on boards that I've led, and I think there's several in the room that have done that, know that I'm a big fan of efficiency. I think that our council sometimes is not efficiently run. There are meetings sometimes run long, that we don't do or manage our agenda well, so that we get to the end of a 2-year cycle, we say, oh my God, we didn't get everything accomplished that we planned to 2 years ago. So as mayor, whether I'm directly elected or whether I was appointed by my council colleagues, I am a big fanatic around efficiency. I want to get stuff done efficiently, effectively, quickly. We need to engage with the community, we need to absorb that information, and we need to act on that information very quickly. We need to respect our staff because they are the subject matter experts. They usually know what they're doing. There's a rebuttable presumption they do. We do have a disagreement with staff. We need to be very clear on what things we want to do differently. So I am going to be an efficient and effective mayor. I will listen to you. I will respect your time. I will respect the time of my council colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this question as well. I'm just going to echo my colleagues here. Responsibilities are pretty much the same, pays the same. You set the agendas, you help set the agendas for the meetings, you facilitate the discussions, you show up to events and offer some words from the city, some gravitas at times. So those are kind of the duties of the mayor, and they're not really going to change with this election. But what I think this elected mayor position does is really give us the opportunity to change how the mayor does this work. To have a focus on inclusion and bringing a lot of different voices to the table, especially the ones that are often heard in the halls of Boulder politics. To foster debate in meetings. That's one thing that's often hard. You don't get to see us having these rich debates that that we may sometimes have one-on-one or with folks in the community, to keep our discussions on track, as Bob was mentioning. And I think this issue, though, of opening up spaces for other people is really one of the most important things that this new mayor can do. It's really about cultivating a culture. It is a culture change, as candidate Taishya Adams was talking about. It really is that culture change that's going to lead us to something better. And that's the kind of thing I've been doing my whole life as a woman in science and a woman in politics, is really pushing for that kind of culture change. And I know all of you women out there, whether we agree on politics or not, you know what I'm talking about with this. And that's what I commit to do. Thank you.
We're beyond standing room only, and there are just a few seats in here, and there's actually two right up here if you want a front row seat.
There's two right here.
Yeah, if you've got seats nearby, put up your hand. Okay, well, that wouldn't make much difference. Because some people like to stand. All right, so that was the first question for mayoral candidates only. And now that I have the mic, I know that I need to read the next question. I'm going to start with Paul again and just go down in the same order. But
Why? It's like, well, I don't got a chance to think.
Start with Aaron. Start with Aaron.
okay, I'm going to start rotating when we get to the full lineup. But let's go ahead, start with Aaron. And you have time to think and listen to everybody else. Okay, so Aaron, for you. How will you establish the community's expectations that the new position of elected mayor is still one of 9 members of the city council, and that you have no special authority to direct city staff or control council policies?
I think this is an important point. I remember when the direct election of the mayor was on the ballot, talking to then mayor at the time, Sam Weaver, who was concerned about this measure. He says, I don't want to see a little king get set up in Boulder. And it's very important that not happen, right? That the new mayor of Boulder, the next mayor of Boulder, lead with humility and as a colleague and with collaboration. And that is absolutely how I have worked the last 2 years and how I would commit to working the next 2 years. Because it's really important to not put your thumb on the scale with city staff. It can be challenging. Like if you go to somebody in city staff, you're the current mayor, and you say, you know, I'm really interested in doing things this way, it puts them in a really difficult spot, right? Because they're like, well, the mayor's not allowed to tell me to do that, but it's the mayor. Like, what do I do next? And so I have never done that. I would never do that. And I expect the next mayor to absolutely lead with fairness and integrity and collaborative approach, which would be my commitment if you do me the honor of re-electing me as your mayor. Thanks so much.
This is something I think about a lot as well. I think 2 E's come into play here, education and expectations. I know that everybody in this room gets it, but there are a lot of people out there in the community who have an expectation of the mayor of Boulder, once he or she is directly elected, is going to be like the mayor of Denver or Los Angeles or Chicago that will actually run the city staff and administer the city functions. And of course, that is not changing. Someone on city staff told me that last year city council received 18,000 emails from constituents. I read every single one of those 18,000 emails, and I responded to almost every single one of them. And if I missed you, let me know afterwards. I'm pretty sure I did. And so I want to use that communication device both in my newsletter and in my email responses to each of you and other members of the community to make sure that people understand that the mayor is one of 9, that the mayor has no special powers, that doesn't have veto authority. I know there'll be expectations: plow my street, fill my potholes, do this thing and that thing, fix my ticket. We get those requests now. But I think it's going to be very, very important for the first 1 or 2 directly elected mayors to set that expectation so they understand that even though that mayor was chosen by the people broadly, that mayor is still one of 9 in council and has no special authority. And I plan to do that in my first few months as mayor because I think it's super important that we not miss that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just echo some of the words I heard here: humility, collaboration, accountability, setting expectations. How I really see this mayor position is sort of the same way that I approach management. It is really an issue of recruitment and retention. We've seen over the last few years, it's been really hard to recruit people and keep them on council who have a lot of the historical knowledge and expertise. And I do feel that is a loss for our community, that some of that goes staff. We've been having a lot of issues with turnover, and we lose knowledge every time that happens. And I think one of the first things we can do is from day one really establish expectations about how we're gonna work together as a team, how we're gonna hold each other accountable. When we are doing or saying things that don't feel good, how do we set up a culture where we can say something and not have to worry about being, kind of taken down for calling out some of the issues that may be interfering with our ability to work together. I think it's just really important to set those expectations from the get-go so that we can have accountability and really help shape this position. This next council is going to have a really strong role in shaping what this elected mayor position is, and having someone in leading the mayor position who understands some of these issues of accountability, creating a culture where we can work together and collaborate as a team. This to me feels like the biggest thing we can do to make sure that the mayor doesn't kind of go rogue, become a little king, and move forward in ways that aren't healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I'm not an expert in committee meetings and procedures. I'll tell you one thing, I hate meetings. I hate them. I mean, they're necessary, but it's like a necessary evil. And here's one thing I learned, always schedule a meeting, at 11 to 50 minutes before lunch. And that way you can get everything decided. We hear a lot about these days about including diverse voices and hearing from underrepresented people. That's all very fine, but sometimes, if you've got more dialogue, in this polarized times that we're living, it creates more chances to fall out, more chances to step on somebody's toes, or to, if I were elected mayor, I'd put my priority on less talk and more action.
All right, so now we're going to go to round two, in which I'll ask questions for the entire lineup. That means for those of you who came in late, mayor candidates and city council candidates. And I guess let's continue the rotation that we've got going. So first speaker will move down the line.
So Bob will be first now.
Yeah, let's go with Bob first. Give him the least amount of time to think about it. Okay, first question. Describe your view of the carrying capacity of Boulder's environment, considering such things as water supply, transportation systems, and the increase in motor vehicles, preservation of natural resources, and overall quality of life. Is there a limit to how much growth and the rate of growth Boulder can accommodate? And let me remind you that
1 minute with 15-second grace period.
that answer could go on for hours, but you've got 1 minute. Wow.
Well, I'll just say, I think we've exceeded that capacity. I think that we have gone a little beyond the point that where our natural environment can accommodate us. That doesn't mean that anybody has to leave. It just means we need to be smarter about how we fit into the circle that we've embraced ourselves, the circle of nature that we are living in. We need to be smarter on how we do transportation so we can get around within our bubble. But we also need to respect our environment outside of our bubble of the city. We have a limited capacity to add incremental housing in this town. Maybe a little here, maybe a little there. So we need to be more efficient and smarter about how we do make housing affordable. I'll give you a concrete example. Last week, we increased the occupancy limit in our town. That might have squeezed a few more people in town, but it did not increase affordability. There was no affordability covenant that was put into that by the majority on council. And so we may have more people living in this town, but we didn't make it cheaper for anybody. So I think we have exceeded our reach our carrying capacity. We need to be very, very careful about how we add new things to our community going forward. Thanks.
So I think we're in this struggle where we are feeling like we are short on things, partly because some of us have far more than others do. Some of us have always used far more than others do. And we know this from a lot of climate research. If we can move away from this idea of extraction and taking things out of our lands, out of our people, without accounting for the harm that we're doing, I think we get to a much better place. For example, the water that falls from the sky on Boulder city limits is about 20,000 acre feet of water per year. The city uses 14,000 acre feet of water per year. What a difference would it make if we started setting up our city so that we had absorbent landscapes, so that we had more trees to help cool and transpire that water into natural air conditioning. All of that would make a difference. What if we stopped using less things, started creating a circular economy, stopped using single-use plastics? That's how we get to a place of more sustainability. And as we focus on restoring our natural ecosystems, that is the place where we'll be able to handle all the climate refugees that will be coming in the next century. Thank you.
This issue is something I've seen evolve throughout my life in Boulder. We've seen more residents choose to come to Boulder. We've seen CU increase admissions. These are all things that come with environmental struggles that we need to address. I think for transportation, we need to look into subsidizing access to public transportation. As we've seen this summer with free transportation use, it has shown an increase in usage. We also need to look into increasing ways of water retention. We've been lucky this year to have a lot of rain and moisture, but with climate change, it's going to increase severe storms and also increase drought. So we need to look to prepare for the future, possibly invest in gray water recycling technology that allows us to retain more water for years of drought. We also need to address the usage of transportation and do actual surveys with communities and neighborhoods and who would benefit most from access to free public transportation.
Thank you. So I actually believe in regrowth, a regrowth strategy, which includes degrowth of emissions, degrowth of waste in our energy systems and our water systems. A couple to that is regenerative approaches based in nature-based solutions. And so what does that mean and look like? That means habitat and biodiversity restoration. That means ensuring that our water infrastructure, which is more than 100 years old, is meeting the needs of the community members that we have right now. I'm also specifically speaking to our mobile park communities who are currently have the worst water infrastructure and their water quality is not there. We are also seeing increases in our, rather decreases in the quality of our air as well. So again, it's not just about, we actually do have the space. But what we don't do well is share. And so that's really the question that we have. Are we willing to share the resources that we have to create the world that we want 7 generations? Thank you.
So, Paul.
Yeah, we've got limited resources here in Boulder. We've got to be smart how we're going to use them. You know, there's a kind of beautiful resource as well, but you know, we have to consider like the beauty of the Flatirons there, the surrounding hills, the Indian peaks, the parks, but also the beauty of Boulder, and it's like, you know, it's 150-year history. And you know, we hear a lot about this, you know, have you seen all these affordable housing kind of schemes that are just built there, and it's just ugly box housing, and people got big crammed in there. I mean, does that look good to you? Because it's just like, you get these lovely neighbourhoods like Mapleton there, up in the historic district, and we're tearing this down. It's like tearing down a parking lot. No, we're building a parking lot, we're tearing down paradise. In affordable housing, if I've got a minute, you know, that's a bit of a misnomer. I was hearing about a lady late yesterday. She's in a tiny little apartment and she's paying $1,600 a month. Does that sound affordable to you? Because it doesn't to me.
Yeah, so Boulder has always had a history of planning growth carefully, and I want to thank Plan Boulder for the historic role in creating our open space program and the blue line and the growth boundary and the height limit, and none of those things are going away. And so that means that we're always going to grow in a sustainable fashion. And the way we need to do that is by focusing smart growth, where there are services, where you can walk and bike to things, where there's rich transit, right? So you want those 15-minute neighborhoods in any of the additional building and growth that you do. But it's important that we continue with at least some of this, because I tell you, I have kids who are 17 and 20, and they have no hope in their eyes of ever affording a place to live in Boulder. And so we need to make sure that we're creating opportunities for younger folks, for people of color, and other marginalized community to have a space here in our town. So as we continue to move forward, some smart growth to allow for some additional opportunities to broaden and diversify our community are critically important. Thank you.
All right, we'll move down the line. Nicole, you're first on this question, which you all could have probably written yourself ahead of time. What do you see as the most effective tools the city can use to achieve housing affordability? How would you change those tools or add to them to increase the supply of affordable housing, considering regulations, land use, and economic development strategies? Go for it.
Thank you. I think this is one thing that our council, this council, has really worked well together on. We've really been focused on what are some things we can do to try to get more housing into our community. So we've worked on things like ADU reform, on some relaxing of zoning and land use changes. We have worked for a little bit more affordable housing. We're getting a day services center that's going to have some permanent supporting housing along with it. So I think this is something that most of us have, actually all of us, most of the time agree that we need here. What I see though as one of the critical issues is really that this broader issue of affordability that candidate Taishya Adams talked about in her opening. People are just simply not being paid enough to live here. They're not earning enough from Social Security to keep up with rental payments. And the changes that we make to housing and land use now will help stop the rise from increasing as much as it would have in about 20 or 30 years. It's not helping right now. So the things that will help right now is more basic needs assistance, as well as raising our minimum wage so that people can afford to be here.
I think in the past, the council has looked at this issue and taken it very seriously, so I'd like to appreciate that. I want to continue that. One thing since the pandemic is we've noticed a lot more vacant office spaces and commercial spaces. I really think we need to look into redeveloping these areas into permanently affordable housing. There's tons, I think like 10% of office or commercial space is vacant. That's a lot of area that we can transform. We also need to look at increasing cash and loan linkage fees to provide more funding for affordable housing. It's really important that we push businesses and developers to make sure that they're doing the right thing for Boulder and the right thing for our community if they want to come here and add to our community. Infill is another thing we can look at for areas that have space for it. We have to make sure that areas that we are looking to infill have been discussed and have proper dialogue with the community, the neighborhoods that we're looking to utilize. I think affordable housing is something that we really need to push for, but in a smart, sensible, sustainable way.
A tool is only as good as our ability to use that tool. We've got tons of tools. Tools that have been created I'm just gonna go to the 1970s, but I know, I'm confident we have tools that were created well before that. We have ancestral indigenous tools that we could be using. So tools is not the issue. The issue is our relationship and trust with each other to use these tools. The trust that we have with each other to use the tools, right? The tools of ADU, the tools of that infill, right? People in our community have been promised certain things about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the labors that we have done, and we have not gotten those things back at the proportionate rates that we have given in. That is something that we absolutely need to do, and we've got the tools for that. We've got an environmental justice tool. We've got Colorado Parks and Wildlife has tools. Our federal agencies have tools. Tools is not the issue. It is how do we streamline and connect those tools? How do we have intersectional conversations about housing, transportation, workforce, and health? We are all just one potential tremendous health incident away from being in poverty. I'm a breast cancer survivor, I can tell you. Fully employed had the best gold standard of insurance, and it costs quite a bit. What are we willing to share? And are we willing to build the trust necessary to use these tools? Thank you.
Thank you. As you may have surmised, I'm not a fan of more affordable housing. Yeah, I think it's these developments are unsightly, they're soul destroying, and they're not affordable. Does anyone remember the Blue Line? The Blue Line was it was introduced to the Charter of Boulder, I think it was in the 60s, sometime around about then. And the idea is you couldn't build up the hill. You know, they just wouldn't provide you with resources like your gas, electricity. It just says no, there's no water up there, nobody's building up there. Back then it seemed like people keener, if you will, to preserve what we've got and not just like be everywhere else. So I don't know, it seems like state laws come in and then it's like, oh no, that overrules your own charter of your own city. Well, I'm against it, guys. Thank you.
So one key approach with this is to take some of our aging strip malls and monolithic business communities, many of which have empty buildings, and transform those into walkable, mixed-use, vibrant neighborhoods. And so we're working right now on some rezonings in East Boulder to unlock some of that potential, and with big chunks of affordable housing being produced as part of that. And I'll point to the Diagonal Plaza redevelopment as an example of that, because that's about transforming an older retail strip, but it's also about what you can do when you tweak your regulations. And I could geek out on this, but I don't have a lot of time. But we changed one specific requirement on that plot, and then unlocked the ability to build more than 200 housing units, 25% of which are permanently deed restricted affordable, that are going to be run by Boulder Housing Partners. So tweaks like that can go a long way to unlocking the amount of affordable housing that we need here in the community. And I'll also point out that when we have those walkable, bikeable 15-minute neighborhoods, you can also apply some parking reform, right? Because you don't need quite as much parking if you can walk and bike and take transit to places. And parking, especially structured parking, is very expensive, and one of the things that adds to the cost of market rate housing as well. So we definitely have a lot of tools at our disposal to unlock some of these additional affordable and attainable housing options. Thank you.
There's a difference between housing accessibility and housing affordability. Boulder's been adding about 200 to 300 new housing units a year for as long as I can remember. Have our prices gone down? No, they haven't. They continue to go up. Boulder is now the 8th most expensive housing market in the country. Most expensive in Colorado, 8th in the country, comparing ourselves to San Francisco and Honolulu and places like that. So we're not doing a very good job of making things affordable. We do have a wonderful program called Inclusionary Housing, where we make housing affordable for low-income families, those making less than 60% of the area median income. So we're doing pretty good on low-income housing. We're not doing very good on middle-income housing. I'm very proud of a middle-income down payment assistance program that I created with former Mayor Sam Weaver, which just launched last week, which allows middle-income families to get into middle-income housing without a down payment. The city will loan that down payment money to a middle-income family, interest-free and payment-free for 15 years. We need those types of government interventions, whether they be low income and affordable accessory dwelling units, occupancy. All those types of housing changes need to come with an affordability covenant so people can afford to live here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Move down the line, Jacques, you're up for this one first. What do you see as the critical issues for the next update of the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan?
This issue is a deep issue that requires thorough thought. We really have to make sure that we preserve neighborhoods and we preserve our sense of sustainability as we continue to develop. Areas in the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, we need to continue to rezone and look at restructure of certain areas that can allow higher density. We need to continue to prioritize sustainable transportation and healthy job balance to housing units. The areas of conservation and protection of our open space need to continue to be at the top of our priority. We need to not push for sprawl, but push for redevelopment and infill. We need to also continue to push for sustainable business practices and continue to support small businesses in Boulder and have that be a priority when we look to revise the Boulder Comprehensive Plan. I've seen a lot of small businesses be pushed out of downtown areas because they can't afford rent. They can't afford to continue with their and to compete with the large businesses that are moving and replacing them.
Thank you very much. In addition to, I echo the comments around climate as it relates to our Boulder Comprehensive Plan. One of the most critical additions to that plan needs to be metrics around biodiversity restoration. Right now, we only have measures around emissions. The global climate community has agreed that biodiversity is as important as emissions reduction. Feel free to Google is our friend. And so that is going to be a critical component of the work that we're doing. In addition, the racial equity plan. Again, I mentioned my ancestors, right? Who came and invested but never, we lived on a 3-block radius apparently and didn't have access to loans and all of these things that allow housing and workforce to be a possibility. These are the issues that I want to make sure that we're addressing in the update of that plan. Sadly, I've heard from a lot of folks who have access to that low-income affordable housing that is not enough, that it does not build the intergenerational wealth needed to ensure that future generations from that family line will be okay. Intergenerational thinking, 7-generational thinking is what our comprehensive plan needs to reflect. Thank you.
Hey, I have nothing to say about the comprehensive plan, so I won't waste your time. I'll just say, go Buffs.
I have a couple things to say about the comprehensive plan. So between my time on planning board and my time on council, this will be my 3rd comprehensive plan update. And it's exciting each time to see about how we check in with the community about the issues that have grown and been created since the previous update. And I'll call out a couple here. And one is the climate emergency and how much worse it is than 8 years ago. And how are we going to shape our community in the face of that, in the face of fires like the Marshall Fire, and all of those threats to our community from climate change. And also about how we're improving racial equity in our community. We passed the city's first ever racial equity plan about 1.5 years ago. And the last time we did our comprehensive plan, we were not paying nearly as much attention to the issues of social justice and racial equity at that time. And those are critical for our community, and we need to make sure that they're woven all through our comprehensive plan in the next update. Thank you.
Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan is our planning Bible. It tells us what we build where. We update it once every 10 years. Next year we're going to update it, so it's really important we elect the council. Under the comp plan, there are 3 areas. Area 1, that's the city of Boulder. Area 2 is stuff around Boulder that we might annex in someday. And Area 3 is stuff that we're never going to annex in. We have a special area called the Area 3 Planning Reserve. It's kind of like Area 2.5. It's something that we might annex in someday. It's 500 acres in one place. The most important thing we can do in the comprehensive plan is to take a look at the Area 3 Planning Reserve and decide whether we want that to be part of the city of Boulder. 500 acres would generate a lot of potential housing. This time, unlike a lot of Boulder, we need to do it right. We need to plan for floods, we need to plan for fires, we need to make sure that every single housing unit we put out there is affordable. That's the most important thing for the comprehensive plan next year will do. Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks for this question. I think this is one of the most important things this next council will work on. For me, two of the big things are climate and equity, and I think this needs to come out really strongly in our Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan, specifically with regard to implementing a climate risk assessment for every parcel of land in our community to understand how that land is going to change and what kinds of risks it is going to be experiencing in the coming decades. That's how we keep our semi-arid region from heading into desert territory. One of the things that we could do is really focus on ecological monitors. There are other communities around the country that are focusing on restoring connections with tribal nations whose people have been on these lands since time immemorial, and really thinking about how we can create those new relationships, have people on the lands monitoring for the kinds of changes that are going to be happening in the coming decades on the scale of months, not years, not decades, but months. We also need to be focusing on water and on land regeneration. A third of the carbon in our atmosphere is from land regeneration. As we start to focus on how water flows through our city, how we are caring for our lands and our relationships with each other, that's how we start to keep ourselves safe in the climate crisis.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Let's move on. Taishya, you're up first on this one. Transportation. How would you change the transportation system in Boulder to reduce congestion on the existing network, increase safety for other modes of mobility, and acknowledge the need citizens have for some level of automobile use? Who would pay?
So when I think about energy, another candidate who's running, who's not here today, Ryan S., shared some knowledge that he has around when I went and observed the Transportation Advisory Group. And he talked about the importance of engineering, education, enforcement, and evaluation. Right now, a lot of our conversations are around multimodal, which is really important, and we want to continue to build on that. We want to eliminate deaths by those who are biking. I am a e-biker, so that is something that I'm very much interested in, building infrastructure that keeps everybody safe. I'm also very much interested in ensuring that our communities of disability are not forgotten in this quest for a carless city, to ensure that those who need transportation can get there and until our public transportation systems can catch up. I also am a strong advocate of using every single dollar on the table. We have the Inflation Reduction Act. Within it lies somewhere in the field of $140 million for just one program that can come to Colorado. There's multiple programs, and we need to make sure that our businesses, as a business owner, I want to make sure that my fellow business owners know about the opportunities that are there to reduce energy consumption and other things, and then leveraging our climate tax that we passed here locally. We have a federal and local commitment. Let's get to work. Thank you.
What can we do to improve the buses? I read in the paper, I was at the camera, it was saying that one of the routes, it wasn't the skip, is it the jump or something? It's like, there was no bus drivers to actually do the route. The buses weren't going. So one thing we could do is hire more drivers. Or like just an idea. Also, when I look around, it's like the bus occupancy rate is bringing down. Would you say, have you noticed that? It's just like you see buses going fast and they're empty. And it's like, but some people need the buses. But we need someone that can take, and I'm sure there is someone in charge of this, well, give them a shake, tell them to do a better job. Thank you.
Yeah, so as the Mayor of Boulder, I'm part of the Northwest Mayor and Commissioner Coalition, and we went on an advocacy trip to Washington, D.C. back in February, and we were advocating for two things. One was money for a bus rapid transit route to Longmont, with an accompanying regional bikeway, and also funding and a partnership with Amtrak to create Front Range Passenger Rail, which would finally get us that train to Denver as well as to points north. Happy to say that all of our congressmen and our senators were very supportive of these requests, and just a couple of months ago, we got a $35 million federal grant, which is the last money that we needed to build that BRT line to Longmont. So expect shovels in the ground soon, and we're gonna have much improved transit and travel times to Longmont along with that regional bikeway. And things are also progressing in the rail direction. We also need to work really hard on our safety, transportation safety here in town. My wife was hit by a car when walking our dog back in January, and thank God she's okay. But you know, we have so far to go still on pedestrian bicyclist safety. So we need to bring all hands on deck on our Vision Zero efforts by adding protected bike lanes and other protections for vulnerable road users. Thank you.
Some people ride buses, some people drive cars, some people ride bikes. Those are all great modes of transportation. But what's the bane of transportation no matter what mode you use? One word and it starts with P. Potholes. Oh my God. Those potholes are huge this year. If I could do one thing on transportation, it would be to improve our pothole filling. Oh my God. I ride around a lot of times on a bike or a scooter. Some of those potholes are so big, they're half the diameter of my tire. If I hit one of those things going fast, I would be on the ground. It's uncomfortable in a car. It's impossible on a bike or a scooter. So let's just fix our potholes. That's the least we can do to people in our community. We can have long discussions about transit and biking and getting people into e-cars. By the way, we're not giving up cars. Cars are going to be with us for a very long time. People need cars to move stuff around, move kids around, to get to work. So we're not eliminating cars in this town as much as some people would like to do that. But we do need to make getting around, whether it's by bus, car, or bike, a lot easier by filling the damn potholes.
Yeah!
It makes a lot big difference. So one of the things that's coming, hopefully from the state this next legislative session, is more funding for RTD. I think that will help. Mayor Brockett mentioned we do have some bus rapid transit, some other service that will be starting, but ultimately RTD can't really get us back to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon. That's unfortunate. We have been working on the core arterial network, which is really making some of the key areas around town where we have the most traffic deaths and injuries, just making them safer so we can get around. So all of this is good, but we really need to get people to use what we have. And I think that's potholes and filling potholes. I think it's also making sure walkways are clear of snow and ice so it's safer to get around. And I would like to see us move toward universal design standards. You go on Google, it's a wonderful thing. You can go down a rabbit hole and see how amazing this would be. It is creating walkways, streets, pathways that are accessible to people who use mobility assistive devices, to people with vision and hearing impairments, to people with mental illness and neurological disorders like sensory processing disorder. And you do this by making more green, creating more trees, creating more absorbent landscapes, creating more benches for people to sit. So if we can move toward universal design standards, I think we'll get more people using more mobility.
Greenhouse gases have been one of the largest contributors to climate change, and it's important that we address this through looking at alternative forms of transportation. For the last 20-some years, there's been about 60,000 people commuting into Boulder for their jobs, and 80% of these people are in single-occupancy vehicles. That's a mindset that we need to change, and we need to figure out ways to incentivize that. We need to work with these businesses that are bringing in these people to incentivize carpooling and incentivize rapid transportation. We also need to look into providing free parking at the Table Mix Park and Ride, at the Superior Park and Ride, and increasing access to transportation so people don't have to worry about timeliness. That's the main thing why people drive cars, is because they want to be punctual, they want to be on time, they want to have their own sense of control on that. So we need to work with these communities to find ways to have dialogue that'll bring a solution to this. I do think it's also important that we look to expand programs like the HOP, where it's a city-operated program, and we do neighborhood assessments to figure out which neighborhoods would benefit the most and which people would use these programs the most. There's a lot of people in the elderly community who don't drive and choose to use public transport, or they can't bike, and I think we need to work to find solutions for them.
Thank you, candidates. So we're back to Paul. You're first up.
Well, how about
Good one.
good governance? Like that one?
Okay. What do you think is working and not working in the city's public engagement and policy development processes? Specifically, what is working, specifically, what is not working, and what would you recommend doing to fix what isn't working?
Right. I could just take a little tangent here. You know, we're talking about, I don't know what the policies are. These guys are the experts, they're incumbents. And I don't know what's wrong, but I know what people tell me, what they're concerned about, and so far I've not heard about it. Say it. If you just invited 100 people to say, what's the number one issue that you're worried about in Boulder right now? What do you think it would be? Anybody? Yeah. Crime? And homelessness, yeah. That's one. Two. Or are we going to get around to that? In which case, I've got nothing to say in this issue, but I will return to it because it's something that I believe in very. I mean, it's City Council's job to come up with a plan and then execute that plan and test is the plan working. If not, change the plan. Look at other cities that have the same kind of problems we are here in Boulder. Denver is the number 4 destination for homeless people. Denver's just 30 miles down the road. Anyway, we'll get back to this in a minute. I hope anyway. Thank you.
So I think there are aspects of this that are going well. We have such a talented citizenry, set of residents here in Boulder, and we hear from you all constantly and get all kinds of fantastic ideas. I can't tell you how many times during a public hearing or reading my emails or going to a workshop out in town that I hear a great idea from a local resident that then gets incorporated into the city's policies. So I think we've come a fair distance from a few years ago. We had our public participation working group that came out with some great ideas, and I think we are doing some improved engagement with the community. And I get out to those workshops all the time, and I see the ideas being generated out of those, and then they make their way to council and into policy. One area I will call out though is emails. I'm afraid we do not have a good city system for responding to emails. It's not as good as it should be. We have a form that people submit, and so I read all those emails and respond to many of them. And some city staff respond to some of them, but we do need an improved system for tracking the emails that come in, flagging which ones haven't responded to, which ones haven't, and making sure that every resident gets a good answer when they write into us. So that's something that's a priority for me, is for us to improve the public engagement. Thank you.
8 years ago, I was in this room for this forum. I ran for city council in 2015. And one of the things I said is public engagement. Public engagement sucked back then. So one of my ideas in 2015 was chats with council. And after I got elected in 2015, I persuaded my council colleagues to sit in a room like this with real people and hear what they had to say. 4 years ago, when I ran for re-election, I wanted to expand on chats with council, so I suggested walks with council. So we could walk around your neighborhoods and see what you had to say. I won election. I got council to do walks with council. Those are 2 good ideas. I disagree with Aaron with respect to emails. It's not that hard. You read them, you respond to them. You don't need a tracking system. You just need to read them. You need to respond to them, and we need to listen to people. That's as simple as it is. I don't go to bed at night. My wife will tell you, my wife Katie here will tell you, I do not go to sleep at night unless I've read every single email that community members have sent me. Some nights that means I go to bed very, very late. But I will read your email the same day you send it, and I will probably respond to it.
Thank you. So I'll talk about one of the things I think is working really well. During the pandemic, we set up a group called the Community Connectors and Residents, who can go out into pockets of the community that often don't have time or resources, or are able to kind of find the places online where they can get in touch with us, and actually going into those communities, hearing what people are saying, and bringing their feedback back to council to inform our decision making. I think it's a wonderful system, and I think it's really helping us move forward in some good directions, not just with our racial equity plan, but with all of our city's goals. One of the things that I think, we know this a lot in climate spaces and in environment spaces. We know that diversity is critical for systems, right? For ecosystems. The same is true for groups of people working together as well. We need diversity. We need to think about who's not represented on council. How do we get folks there? One of the key things that I think we can do is pay council a living wage. Because if you are, if you have children, if you're disabled, if you have a job because you need it to pay your bills, you can't do this work and that's not okay. You need those perspectives too.
One thing I'd be curious to discuss with council members who are seasoned, been in there before COVID, is how much engagement has shifted since pre-COVID to post-COVID. And I'd like to see, what tools they think would bring back that pre-COVID engagement. The job of council is to be engaged with the community, but there's important steps that we need to do before. That's why we have boards and commissions, and it's important that these boards and commissions do the groundwork to iron out the issues and make sure that they are engaged with the community fully. We need to make sure that we have proper statistically valid surveys that represent the diverse community of Boulder. And we need to make sure we have more community input from different neighborhoods, because each neighborhood has its own pros and cons to its location in Boulder, and we need to make sure that each voice is heard and each voice is represented in government.
So I had the opportunity to serve on the inaugural Boulder Police Oversight Panel. That was the first time I had an opportunity to serve locally after years of serving at the national and state level. And what I found was that was actually the most racially and ethnically diverse entity that our city has to inform. So when I see our city, I see a city with two power structures as it relates to community and community engagement. The residence program, which is absolutely incredible, and our boards and commission. I made sure to visit as many boards and commission meetings as I could in preparation for this opportunity, and I found something that was quite distressing. Again, from video, it does not seem that our boards and commissions, who are critical they are the part of the collaboration. They are at the very end of our framework. They are collaborating, they are partners, they are not just they're not just being informed, right? They are actively collaborating. I'm not seeing the same level of investment in our Community Connector program, nor am I seeing the same amount of power. Those meetings also.
So we've got really highly qualified people coming online who are going to help us deal with this and take this, the resolution of crime issues to the next level. Thank you.
Public safety is absolutely the most critical and number one issue in this campaign. You heard Nicole ask the audience what they thought, and you heard a bunch of people shout out public safety, and I think by that applause, I think we agree with that. How many people here subscribe to my monthly newsletter? Just raise your hand if you do. Yeah. I want to preview, for those of you that are readers, I want to preview for you what I'm going to be publishing. It's always the first Monday of the month. On September 4th, which happens to be Labor Day this year, an article that I'm going to publish in September. And it's on this very question of public safety. You'll see in there, and I don't have time to summarize it now, so you'll have to read the newsletter. 8 problems and 8 solutions. I want to be very, very concrete and specific about what we need to do if we have the courage and the money to address public safety in this community. So stay tuned. Read on September 4th in my newsletter. It's issue number 84. Thanks.
Talk to the developers.
Thank you. I know this really is a critical issue. Before I kind of get into what I think you would like me to talk about with public safety, I just want to broaden the definition a little bit to include flood and fire risk, to include death and traffic violence, death by cars and traffic violence, as well as suicide and mental illness. So I am not saying they are the same. But these are all part of our discussion of public safety, and none of us will be safe until everyone has what they need. It's what our former HRC chair, Lindsay Lober, often says. We cannot have people living in our public spaces. That is not safe for anyone. We have been doing the same thing for the last 2 years. We doubled down on our encampment cleanup strategy. We are doing nothing different on this council than what prior councils have done, except doing more of the same. And is it working, is the question I ask you, because research tells us that it wouldn't, it told us it wouldn't work. And I think we're seeing now that it doesn't work because people don't have a place to go. And when we start focusing on the solutions of where people go when they lose their housing, of why they're losing their housing in the first place, and why we as a society do not take care of people with mental illness and addiction, That's where we start to find real solutions and we get people off of our streets and into safe housing. Thank you.
Through meeting with community members so far, I have found out, like many of you already know, public safety is the #1 issue that our citizens are concerned about. What I've heard is mostly people are worried about the encampment, and I do think we need to continue to enforce the encampment ban, but we also need to provide access to resources for mental health and rehabilitation, areas where these people can go to get sober and have connections with licensed treatment personnel. We also need to work with the city and the state to increase access to these resources. Boulder has taken the burden from our county to pay most of this, and we have the highest residential rate of people experiencing homelessness. The fact that our shelter is only a night shelter displaces people. It pushes them around. It doesn't give them an area to feel safe or hold their stuff, and leads them to relapse and go out and use drugs because, you know, once they're out in the day, who knows what they're going to do. They're not held accountable. I really think we need to push for more ready-to-work programs such as the Bridge House and include funding from the state, the county, and the city in this. One other thing for bike theft, I really think it's important that we utilize technology and start having tracking chips under people's seats where people can't, you know, find them or take them off, so that way your bike gets stolen, you know where it's going to be.
So one, I want to unpack who we're talking about. Whose safety are we talking about? Are we talking about the safety of Zaid Atkins doing his job? That initiated the formation of the Boulder Police Oversight Panel. I can assure you, I too have spoken to a lot of members in our community. I've heard lots of different answers to the #1 concern. And if I were to aggregate on average, I would say it is actually affordability, food, housing, transportation, work. That is the #1. And that is actually the #1 that leads to safety and safety concerns. I will also lift up the children, 600 or 800 children and families that are experiencing housing insecurity. I just want to expand the definition of who's safe, who's not, and the problems that we face. We often, I believe we have a perception versus reality problem. We tend to focus on what we can see. And so we see what's going on on the creek, and we see what's going on in some of our community public spaces. But it's what you don't see that also needs to be addressed. That is the tip of the iceberg. We must have intersectional programming that intersects by education, housing, workforce. Not just for those who are experiencing homelessness, but those who are low income, those who are in middle income. These are all issues that we are trying to figure out together. Whose safety? I advocate for everyone's safety. Thank you.
I think another critical public safety aspect that we've not heard, that you touched on it. It's drugs. And you know, drugs contribute. What drugs means more homeless. What drugs it means more crime. Are we doing enough to address the drug problem here in Boulder? I've got a friend, I went to her son's funeral a couple of years ago. An 18-year-old boy, his name's Jacques. His mother, Patricia, she was heartbroken. Their family was devastated. What are we doing to stop the cartels coming in here and pushing their drugs on our communities and our kids? It's not just marijuana as well, because now they're trying to get the psilocybin. You know, marijuana back at college, it was just like, you know, when we hit, but now it's 95% THC, you'll get that in the shops, and of course you get the fentanyl as well, that killed young Jack, and then overdose.
Thank you all. We're going to go to questions from the audience in about 5 minutes. So I think we have time for one more question. Bob, right? Yes, this is to Bob first. Will you support all legal local control for which Boulder has the authority
or will you be willing to cede some local control to the state?
That's a softball. Boy, that was an easy one. Absolutely no way in hell. We're a home rule city, and we know what that means? We get to make local decisions about land use here in Boulder, Colorado. People in Denver don't decide that for us. Thank you for the applause. People in Denver don't decide for us. The worst bill that I've seen come down in many, many years was SB 23-213. And the state legislature tried to take away our local control of land use, how we zone, how tall buildings could be, how many people could live in them, all sorts of stuff. It was just crazy. It was all crammed in one big, horrible, ugly bill. And 6 of my council colleagues voted in favor of it. They told the legislature, go ahead and take that away. Take that away. Boulder was the only city in the state of Colorado to support that bill. Unfortunately, it failed. Thank God it failed. Because we would be living in a very, very different environment if it passed. So when you make your votes this fall, please ask that of the candidates who are running for city council. Because God help us if we have another council like the last one that supports the state taking away our local control of land use. Ask each one of the candidates whether they support that or not. If they say no, vote for them.
I want to offer a story that's really interesting. So I'm our city council's representative to the Denver Regional Council of Governments. And last year, some of you, especially those of you who are in the greenhouse gas mitigation world, you'll know that Dr. Cog is one of the groups that is tasked with trying to reduce our regional greenhouse gas emissions. So last year, we were actually able to pass a plan, and Dr. Cog's a very, very conservative organization. We passed a rule that basically is going to set a target that if we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions over the next 4 years, everything's cool. We can just kind of keep going forward. If we don't, as a region, hit our greenhouse gas mitigation targets, then we are going to head into mitigation action plan territory, which actually has many of the things that were in Senate Bill 213. We checked. So we are going to be in a place where we will then be incentivized to do some of the things that Senate Bill 213 was talking about. And the way that we're going to be incentivized is that we're not going to get transportation funding anymore. We got almost $50 million of transportation funding. We're not going to get that anymore unless we are meeting that mitigation action plan. So that combination of incentives, of carrots and sticks, that's how I think we get to more collaboration and agreement on these kinds of regional issues. Thank you.
Like Bob said, Boulder is a home rule city. We have our charter that's essentially our own constitution. And I think it's important that Boulder abides by what our own government thinks is a priority, not what the whole state. Boulder as a city is very different than cities like Aurora or Parker or even Denver in itself. There's a limit to what Boulder can do that is sustainable versus, there's more sprawl opportunities further east, and I think it's important that we keep that separation of these different types of cities. A city like Lyons is not going to abide to the same rule that a city like Broomfield is, and so there's no reason to lump those together. It's important to keep that separate. That's why we have cities. That's why we have our own local government.
I will begin with a critical reminder. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. Sometimes, sadly, the majority who have the ability to vote and actually vote, so that's not everybody. See how that majority, I worked at the American Institute for Research for 7 years. Research is the jam. I math really well, science really well. But I say these in fun, but in all seriousness. These are the things that I'm thinking about. I also, sorry, I lost my train of thought on that Emancipation Proclamation because I'm so stunned. There can be tyranny at the local level. There can be tyranny at the state level, and there can be tyranny at the federal level. That's why we have checks and balances, right? I appreciate sometimes there does need to be carrot and sticks at different levels based on the level of authority that they have. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to ensure that our local elected officials are representative of all of the community that we are serving, and that when we are making decisions based on data, it is good data. And good data means that people who are already well represented aren't overrepresented in the data we're being provided. Thank you.
discuss conflicts of interest, when you've got at the local level, the state level, and I guess the federal level as well. I don't think you should be allowed to hold two public offices, two elected offices. Because it's like a man or a woman can't serve two masters. So I mean, like, I know Judy Joseph, I'm thinking about you because you serve in the State House for HD10, and also you serve on the City Council. I think we have to be very clear going forward that, our job on the City Council is to serve the citizens of Boulder. Right?
Just a quick defense of my colleague Jeannie Joseph, who does an amazing job in her two roles. I just had to say that. Thank you for the work you do. So I just say there are some decisions that are better made at higher levels of government. We passed an assault weapons ban here in Boulder. I wish it had been done at the state level. I wish it were done at the federal level, right? If they did it at the higher level, I wouldn't want the ability at the local level to overturn that. Some things do work well at higher levels. So I'll just speak to 213. We engaged with that last year deeply with that land use bill because we saw it going potentially in a direction Boulder could support because it could be in line with our comprehensive plan, which we just talked about. So we offered up 8 requests for changes to be made to bring it into line with the comprehensive plan, and along the way, all 8 of those were made. And so if it had been passed, it would have actually been in line with the policies we already have, and it would have been actually easy for us to comply with because of that. But housing is fundamentally a regional issue, and we share this difficulty, although we have 60,000 in-commuters and some of them come from extremely far away. And so our neighboring communities, we're producing housing in a smart way in alignment with transportation and walkability and bikeability. We as a region and as a society would do better because we were collaborating together on a regional problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you all candidates for respecting the time limits. All in particular, did a good job. And we're actually through all the questions I had, so it's good I didn't have to start making up questions. So now we're going to audience questions for about a half an hour. So I'm going to split, I've got 2 here, I'm going to split them up first for the incumbents. So let's see, so it'd be, let's go Nicole, Aaron, Bob. Here it is. You've served for a few years now. The homelessness situation in Boulder has worsened. Those are not questions, they're your opinions. Why should you be reelected? Nicole first.
Thank you. I will say no one is really listening to me on issues of homelessness. This was one of the critical issues that I looked at before running in 2021, and I went to the research, and I went to the science, and I looked at the national institutes that are working on this to see what kinds of things can help us get to better solutions. And rather than trying to invest in some different kinds of approaches than what we're currently doing, we doubled down. And I know that some of you aren't happy with me voting against the budget last fall, but we were on track to invest another over $1 million in something that we know doesn't work. We know that these encampment removals, where we're just moving people from place to place, do not work. The research tells us it doesn't work. The last 2 years, and this double down that we've done, show us that it doesn't work because you're here telling us that it's getting worse. So we really need to look to the science, look to what's working in other communities, and do more of these regional partnerships, because people do not come to Colorado for services. We know this for a fact. Go to Metro Denver Homeless Initiative and look at some of their reporting. But we do know this is a regional issue. And as Denver gets a handle on what they're doing, that's going to have impacts all across the Front Range, so we need to be working together. Thank you.
Homelessness is the most difficult problem that we work with on the local level. Homelessness is absolutely up the last few years in Boulder and across the state and across the country. And we're doing an all across the board suite of programs to attempt to help with that. It's extremely challenging. We've got some new things coming online though that I'm excited about. The Day Services Center is going to open soon. That'll give folks a place during the day to have a warm place to go to get off of the creek and get connected to services that can eventually get them housed. We've got dozens of new permanent supportive housing units coming online, as well as a respite center where people are experiencing homelessness who are exiting the hospital will have a place where they can go to heal and get well and then go on to other forms of housing. We have to stand up additional solutions to get people off the streets and into housing, right? Because that is what is going to solve this problem. And we're seeing exciting developments in Denver. The new Johnston administration is devoting large quantities of money and attention to this with a plan to get thousands of people off the streets in a relatively short period of time. We're learning from this. We have new funding streams. We've got Proposition 123 that was passed last year that'll bring millions and millions of dollars to help with homelessness and housing solutions as well. So we'll keep working on this. We'll keep collaborating with the community to make a dent in this problem and get more people off the streets. Thank you.
I don't know who asked that question, but that's the best question of the afternoon. With all due respect to Plan Boulder, that was an outstanding question. Why should you vote for us? Why, if this council has failed on homelessness, why should you elect any of the people that are running on council? I want to let you in on a little secret. There's not really one city council. There's two. There's a group of 6 people who vote one certain way, and a group of 3 people that vote another. One of my colleagues, Mark Wallach, is among the 3. I'm among the 3. And so I think you need to look at our respective votes individually. I publish mine every month in my monthly newsletter. I'm very transparent about what my decisions are. One improvement I'd like to see, by the way, is I'd like the votes of all the council members to be published in a place that people can see. Because it's very, very hard to figure out who voted for what, other than maybe digging through the daily camera. So I'd like to see that as a governance improvement. But as I mentioned before, I've got 8 solutions. I'm not going to mention any of them now. You have to read the newsletter to find out what they are. And after you read them, if you think they're stupid, let me know. If you think they're good, let me know. If you have a 9th or 10th one, let me know. Because this is a community problem. It has gotten worse. This council has failed you. And the next council needs to deliver on homelessness so that we have a clean and safe community. Thank you.
Okay, so here's a question for the, non-incumbents. And I don't remember who Jacques. Jacques, you're up. Okay. So you get another crack at this one, actually. You didn't say everything you wanted to say. What is your plan to reduce the rampant crime and danger that residents are experiencing?
I think a lot of the crime that residents have been experiencing is majority bike theft, petty theft. A lot of businesses have actually experienced theft, and that's something we need to take into consideration as well. We need to work with authorities to find solutions that help keep track of these bikes, keep tabs on accounts of theft, and have that be more accessible, have maps of areas that have more crime than other areas so we can focus resources to those certain areas. And then fentanyl and meth use has been a huge problem in our community among people experiencing homelessness. We need to incentivize, not even incentivize, we need to provide more rehabilitation facilities for these people. We need to provide more access to mental health for these people. We need to make sure that they are feeling like they're a part of the community, not that they're outcasts in the community. Once people start to feel like we actually care about them, they're willing to do more to care about themselves and want to rehabilitate themselves into societal norms, and that's something we really need to prioritize.
As riots are often the voice of the unheard, I find that crime tends to be the voice of those who have been disinvested and underserved. And so I would continue, again, going back to evidence, following it, I also concur, again, the evidence that is strong, the evidence that is equitable, the evidence that has researchers that are reflective of the communities being served, the research that has been analyzed. I'm just saying, we're going to talk about research, I'm going to talk about it, because we talk a lot about what the evidence says and the anecdotals that we hear. And I really want us to move beyond our anecdotals. I have had and met with, these aren't those people. These are my friends. These are former family that I've had who have experienced homeless. And these folks are not a monolith. We cannot treat, again, perception versus reality. Everything I hear most talked about is based on the perception of what we are seeing on the creek and in our public spaces that is urgent and important. We have other urgent and important things as well. So how do we balance our time to continue to invest in what we know is working? And one of my favorite things to do, stop doing what we know does not work. Initiative fatigue is what has people coming and going out of our programs. We have retention issues. Let us stick to what we know, and let us remind ourselves that that is not some other people over there. Those are members of our community, and they are honored and worthy of being a part of our community. Thank you.
Sorry, Bill, what was the question?
Got me.
Alright, something to crime. Crime is rising.
What is your plan to reduce the rampant crime and danger that residents are experiencing?
Yeah, because it is going up. We've all seen it. And we can point at this and we can point at that, but what are people going to do about it? You know, we've got a bunch of incumbents here in the city, we've got this plan and that plan, but you know, is that going to address it? I'd say the first thing is people have to respect the law. If people don't respect the law, you can pass all the laws you like, nothing will change. We also have to support the people, you know, the first responders. I'm looking at the city staff, the great men and women in the fire brigade and the police officers. What else? We need to do things that work. I agree with you there. We need to stop doing things that don't work. They're silly. And like, you know, turn this thing around before it gets like, you know, even worse.
Great, thank you. Okay, so a little mixed up. Aaron, I think.
Who goes first? That's the question.
Yeah, didn't Nicole go first?
Jacques went first.
Well, we split it up.
Yeah.
Who's been sitting the longest without an
I
answer? I think it's Aaron.
go first this time.
There you go.
Aaron, do you have any non-negotiables in terms of growth and development you would support? For example, would you say, I will never agree to selling off or building on open space? Or I will never support changing the height limit? Or do you have others you might offer?
I would never support selling off open space for development. That's an easy one. No, our open space is absolutely sacrosanct and is a treasure of our community and one of the things that makes Boulder such an extraordinary place to live.
So we probably can't imagine where we're going over the next 50 to 100 years. So no, I would not look to open space as one of the first places to develop. We have plenty of parking lots. We have plenty of large single-family homes. We have a lot of spaces that we can put more housing, if that's what we are choosing to do. I really think we need to be focused on how we are using our water and our land. How are we restoring our land? How are we using it for agriculture, especially for restoring some of these ecosystems? That's what we need to be focused on. Thank you.
My non-negotiables are ensuring that every decision I'm involved in is for sustainability, for reducing our greenhouse gases, for ensuring that the quality of life in Boulder is as high as it can be, that everybody has access to clean air, to clean water, to sustainable free transportation if that is an option that we can continue, to ensure that our bike paths and walkable paths are safe and people can walk around without having impacts of vehicles. Ensuring that everything we do is to make Boulder the most sustainable and encompassing city it can be.
My grandfather taught me that your word is the most valuable thing you can give another. I can stand here and say with no problems that in my non-negotiables, there are two things. I will not negotiate any toxins for people, all the people, regardless of where you live in our city. And another non-negotiable is any toxins to the land, wildlife, and waterways that we depend on. Those are the two non-negotiables that I have, and they will be reflected in every policy decision that I make. Thank you.
What my non-negotiable in? You know this is money talks. Yeah? It's just like you see a project get like approved. You think, I thought I was a white land there. I don't want to be allowed to do that. Why? But money talks. Or you see a housing development, like, you know. How did that get approved? Approved. Yeah, out of state developers. Talks. But man, non-negotiable one, let me tell you. I want to take bribes and I want to take kickbacks. So don't offer them to me because I'll punch you in the mouth often my pants. Thank you.
That's it, right? Yeah. So, Bob. Okay, from the audience again. The rich have been buying up Boulder housing, some of which sits empty. Would you support a 4% fee on all real estate sales above $4 million in Boulder to support affordable housing?
Sure. That's not allowed right now under state law. The state preempts that or prohibits cities from having.
Excuse me, he read the thing wrong.
Okay.
It's a 4% documentary fee, which is legal in the state.
Yeah, I'm not, thank you for clarifying the question. I'm not sure that's allowed in the state either, but we'll check that
The
together.
state collects the documentary fee.
The state does, but it doesn't let the cities do it. But rather than arguing about whether they do or not, if it was allowed, if it is allowed, I would be supportive of that. Documentary stamp taxes are very, very common around the country. In Colorado, I believe they don't let cities do that, but if Boulder was allowed to do that, it would be fine with the documentary stamp tax, and it would be another source of funding for affordable housing. So thank you for asking the question. Let's you and I together the research to see if Boulder can do that. I've always been told by the city attorneys that we can't as a city, but let's check into that. And so what I will say to you is, if it turns out we can't, I would be in favor of advocating to the state that we'd be allowed to do that. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, if we can do that, that is something that I would very much be in favor of. I do not think it is okay that we have so many homes that are being purchased, that are being torn down, that are being doubled in size, and we are not getting any kind of, we're not getting anything back from that for the city, especially when we've got one or two people who are living in those homes. We really need to be thinking about how we can get more money for not just affordable housing, but for providing more of the basic needs assistance that people in our community are needing right now. We have extraordinary wealth disparities in our community, and I think that our housing prices are one of the big reasons. When I bought my home in 2009, it was under $400,000. It has more than doubled. In that time, I have not done anything to deserve that, to get that. It has just simply doubled from my sitting in it. And that to me feels like something that I need to be thinking about how can I get back to the community, as well as people who have second homes, third homes, people from out of state who are buying up large properties and places in our city. We need to be thinking about how we're getting more money from folks. Thank you.
So this is something I would further need to research and go a little bit deeper into, have a full opinion on, but I think it does sound like a good idea to encourage non-vacancy in our areas. I think one thing that I touched on earlier with vacancy is the office spaces and the available room that we have to redevelop, and I think we should look into increasing cash and loan linkage fees to support more affordable housing. We need to use the tools that we already have accessible to us and accelerate that transition to provide more affordable housing.
I don't advocate robbing Peter to pay Paul. As a business owner, right, the idea of our taxes going up, it assumes that all of us are at the same threshold, and that is not the case. Also, the money would only be used for housing, but how does that support employers being able to provide a living wage? There's more than one bill that comes into a family's home. And by raising wages, we don't have to nickel and dime and backfill all of these things. We know what needs to be done. Let's find the easiest pathway to get there. We don't have as much time as we had in 1970 to make the climate changes and choices that we need to make. So, I would be open to hearing more because I too am not familiar with this opportunity, and in general, I'm open to any pathway because every policy we have on the books is make-believe. Somebody got to decide. And I'm standing here because I want to be involved in decision-making and want to make sure that there are pathways for every voice, not to just be heard. Our voice, we have shouted, we have written plays, we have research, we have music about what needs to happen. We lack the will. I've got the will, and I'm excited to work with you all. Thank you.
I'm also not sure what this is, if it's a new tax. If it's a new tax, I'm against it. One thing I would like to say is, well, all over Colorado, house prices are going up. And now, none of that, they're pushing up the property taxes as well. You see the governor, he's pushing that as well. Well, I've got an idea. If we want to make houses more affordable, look the property taxes. That'll bring down the rents. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks for that question. My understanding is that the documentary fees and real estate transfer taxes are not currently doable at the city level, but I'm going to talk more. We'll look into it. I would pass one in a heartbeat if I had the legal authority to do so. I think it'd be a really valuable source of revenue for affordable housing in our community. I believe this is actually one of the many gifts that Tabor has given us. That ballot measure included many poisonous measures, and this actually was one of them, is my understanding. But would love to see that overturned, and we could implement something like that. Because larger and more expensive homes do decrease from our affordable housing stock. One measure we are taking right now that is within our control is that we're adding an additional inclusionary housing fee based on square footage rather than units, so that larger units will pay more money into our inclusionary housing and affordable housing funds than smaller units. So that's one step we are taking on this problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Yates. So we have just enough time for closing statements. Peter, what do you say we do?
90 seconds each.
1 minute and 30 seconds grace. 1 minute and 30 seconds grace period.
90 seconds.
90 seconds for your closing statements. And it's Nicole.
Thank you. I'm trying to give you all some time back today. So we may have some different approaches here, but I really do believe that we're not that far off in what we envision for our city's future. We all want to stop using fossil fuels. We want affordable, diverse housing with resilient energy systems. We want protection from extreme weather and bad air quality. We want ample public transportation and safe, accessible bike paths and sidewalks. We want local farming that regenerates our ecosystems and gets healthy food to everybody who needs it. We want abundant tree canopies and landscapes that absorb excess water. And we want vibrant, welcoming, inclusive public spaces that bring us together. I champion equity and inclusion on council because in the same way that diversity will restore the health of our waterways and our soils, diversity can restore the health of our community too. So I hope you'll consider voting for me and for inclusive leadership as one of your top choices for mayor on November 7th. You can learn more about my campaign at NicoleForBoulder.com. You can also see the table over there, get a card, get some yard signs if you are interested. I really appreciate you all being here today. Thanks for giving me this time for conversation. Thank you.
As a Boulder-born resident, I believe that I have a perspective that's unique to people who have been here since it's been a small city, or as we like to say, is a non-bustling city. It was a quieter city back in the day, and it's definitely changed. I think there's a lot of ideas that come from the idea of Boulder being a quiet city that have been lost with the technological advancements and higher populations, increased demand for people to want to live in Boulder. So it's important that we have these ideas of what made Boulder so attractive to these people and really focus on those ideas of preserving our open space, preserving our quality air and quality water that allows people to feel free and have a higher quality of life. I think it's also important that we need to push for more sustainable transportation and access to environmentally conscious practices and programs that benefit our community. These are the type of things that drive my focus to want to make Boulder the most sustainable city possible. I really think we need to increase our ideas of water conservation, our ideas of land conservation, our ideas of what sustainable dense housing actually is and how that affects each neighborhood. We really need to educate the population on why Boulder is such a conscious and environmentally friendly city and what the visitors and residents can do to preserve that and increase that consciousness.
It is my hope that together we can build a climate and culturally resilient city. How do we get there? We get there through compassion and courage. The courage to confront the mistruths and lies we've been told about ourselves, about our city, and about our country. We also have the opportunity, again, to embrace the incredible historic investments that we have coming all around. So again, the balance between our relationships with each other and then our ability to tactically address the urgent and important issues that we're facing right now, as well as those that will be faced by those who will be here long before us. That is our goal. And that they're not just struggling to survive, but they are actually thriving. And how do we get there? Through a just and joyous community. How do we get to that vision? It's one relationship at a time. Policy doesn't work, doesn't do work. Systems do not do work. People do work. And it's healing those relationships. Our council brings community together in all sorts of ways, both for joyous ways, whether it be down at the Boulder Creek, or at Moderator, or at the, right? We have all these wonderful ways where we can come together in joyous places and spaces, and we also have these places and spaces where we are setting policy with each other. At the end of the day, it's that harmony that's where I will bring my focus. You can find me at adamsforboulder.com, F-O-R. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. What's the question again, Bill?
It's your closing statement.
My closing statement, yes, thank you. Why should you vote for me? I'm an engineer. I build things. Engineers also test things because we've got to get it right. Because people's lives depend on our decisions. And I'd like to bring my engineering kind of test-driven perspective to the council. And see how we can, figure out solutions that work. Test, listen, test again. It's important that we do the right thing because people's lives depend on it.
Well, thanks so much for having us here today. This has been a great conversation. We're blessed to live in one of the very best cities in the country and in the world. We've got serious problems to work on, y'all. And we have to work on these hard together. We need more affordable and attainable housing. We need better solutions for people experiencing homelessness so they have places to go other than on our streets. We need to solve the epidemics of mental health and substance abuse that are untreated in our communities, in our housed and unhoused populations. We need safety for everyone in our community, whether you're biking down the street or walking along the creek path or anywhere else in our city. Everyone deserves a safe and clean Boulder. And we have to focus on the climate crisis. This is the existential threat of our time. My kids, as I mentioned, they're 17 and 20 years old. When I talk to them, I see they have no hope for a sustainable and livable future for our planet. We are failing our young people, we are failing our future generations, and we have to do better.
When
I'm confident that with your support and with all of us working together, these are problems that we can make progress on and we can solve. And I'm confident that we can all together make Boulder a just, equitable, and inclusive place that it deserves to be. Thank you so much.
You know, the advantage of writing a 2.5-minute speech and only having 2 minutes to give it at the opening leaves me 30 seconds of material to do. So here's the end of the opening speech. You can change things. This fall, you'll have the right and the opportunity to select Boulder's first directly elected mayor. You can choose someone who has decades of leadership experience. You can choose someone who will listen to you. You can choose someone who will tell you how he makes decisions and what he was thinking when he made them. You can choose someone who will lead our community to a place that's safer, cleaner, more affordable, which is both environmentally protected and economically vital. I ask you, please select me as your next mayor, because leadership matters. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the candidates for being here. Thank all of you for attending. And I wish the candidates the best of luck in their campaigns. All the best.
Yep.